¿Quién era?
Que a Pablo Escobar se le respeta.
Coming off our last video, we now have a few epic Pablo Escobar moments. These moments show different angles of this brilliant monster we've all come to love and hate.
Entierra la plata y déjese de pendejadas.
So here's volume 2 of some of the best moments of Pablo Escobar from Narcos. Without further ado, let's get to it.
Ciudadanos de Colombia, recibamos a nuestro nuevo presidente, Pablo Escobar.
Starting at number 10, it's Pablo's dream of being the president of Colombia. It comes as no surprise as humans have dreams and aspirations, and Pablo is no different. This scene depicts his dream of being El Presidente. You see him all smiles, walking around, shaking hands with people like he's Barack Obama. I mean, goodness. And just to show how authentic his dream is, he lights a joint in the middle of greeting people, and best of all, no one does anything. This dream shows what Pablo truly desires: acceptance and respect. Cut to the scene after the dream where he's alone in a worn-down safe house listening to his family wishing him a happy birthday. It's rare that I sympathize with a mass murderer, but in this moment, when the distance between dreams and reality is clearly highlighted, I definitely do.
¿Te crees el muy berraco? Pues ya debes de cambiar tu teléfono satelital.
Next up, we have Pablo threatening Carrillo. In one of the few scenes where I think that every viewer sides with a police officer, we encounter Carrillo on the phone to Pablo. He somehow gets his hands on Pablo's satellite phone number and lets him know that he can't be bought.
Los tengo perfectamente reconocidos y ubicados, gonorrea malparido.
Porque no todo el mundo está a la venta, Pablo.
The insults that are held in this scene make it one of my favorites. We hear Carrillo describing Pablo's son as a tub of lard, and Pablo, not to be left behind, figures out a way to include gonorrhea, a sickening disease, as an insult.
Gonorrea malparido, porque no recibe la plata más bien como todo el mundo.
This is the first time I've ever heard gonorrhea used as an insult, and it's next level.
Su familia malparido, hijo de puta.
Yo, Pablo. Hola, mucho gusto. ¿Qué tal? Mateo Moreno. No. Cucaracha balón.
Leaving behind insults, number 8 is about insects. Not literally, of course. I mean Pablo killing Cucaracha, the unkillable.
Problema es que estos son mis laboratorios, pues, weón.
Mateo Moreno got his nickname when he was lined up for an execution and he managed to survive. He's Pablo's chemist in the beginning, and as Pablo gets richer, he gets disgruntled.
Andan en avión, comen como reyes, weón. Y yo aquí pudriéndome en la puta selva.
As a boss, there's nothing worse than a disgruntled employee. Moreno sells out Pablo, leading to $4 million being confiscated. Pablo's furious and spends another $1 million on finding out who betrayed him.
Cánteme un nombre. Y no va a tener que dividirse el billete con él.
As there's no honor among thieves, Herrera sells him out. Pablo goes to confront him and ends up shooting him in the head, and then a few times in his chest, just for good measure.
Y esa mierda ahí.
With all the cops on the street, it was easy to forget. This was still Escobar's town.
Next up, we have Pablo ordering an attack on the police. Sometimes orders aren't passionate or loud. They can just be quiet, violent, and with the explosiveness of action. In this moment, we see Pablo giving an order to attack the police. He doesn't say much other than, do it.
Patrón, mande. Estamos listos.
The violence that ensues is mind-boggling. His henchmen go on a creative killing spree of the police, including drive-bys and throwing grenades. The death of these policemen was a simple show that he's not afraid.
Esta noche vamos a pelear como nunca hemos peleado. Vamos a pelear con todo lo que tenemos.
At number 6, we have Pablo's motivational speech against the Cali cartel. Pablo highlights one of the things that makes a great leader: the ability to motivate his troops.
A la mierda el cartel de Cali. A la mierda Judy Moncada. A la mierda los Castaños.
In this scene, the cartel's facing pressure from the police and other rival gangs as the sicarios are kidnapped and tortured. It leads to low morale in the organization. Fear is apparent in the faces of the listeners, but Pablo, ever the great leader, puts his foot down and orders his men to prepare for war with the Cali cartel in the fashion of old battle gods like Leonidas in 300.
This is Sparta!
He says, "We will fight side by side to the death, and there's nothing that brings fire to supporters than to follow their leader into battle, as he is their support and anchor."
Porque esta noche yo voy a estar al lado con ustedes peleando hasta la muerte.
It's unfortunate that Kika's a snitch and they end up getting ambushed and losing many lives. If Kika hadn't snitched, perhaps the Medellin cartel would still be alive and prosperous.
Bueno, señor.
Buenas, ¿cómo está?
Tráigale una fresita con crema.
At number 5, we have Pablo grabbing an ice cream. Pablo has balls of steel, like nothing else in this world. I remember I saw a video of a man whose job was to clean a cobra pit, and it looks like he's trapped. But naturally, he shows no fear and just does his job. Pablo clearly has one up on even this man.
Caballero. Gracias. Con gusto.
In the midst of his personal manhunt with his head worth $7 million, he goes to get an ice cream and sits at the park bench to enjoy it as he watches the people around him. He's not nervous or worried, he's just chilling and enjoying his ice cream. I mean, how much more do you need to prove that you're not shaken? He then dreams about his cousin as they reminisce about what was, what is, and what's to come.
Que todo se fue pa'l carajo. Desde el día que usted se fue.
Sometimes an ice cream really is all you need to get some clarity.
No vuelva a hacer eso, señor. Estaba preocupado, es peligroso, patrón.
There's passengers on this flight who can't be allowed into this country. You ever heard Pablo Escobar? Cocaine? That's his family right there. You can't allow them.
Coming in at number 4 is Pablo threatening the German embassy. At the height of his empire crumbling, Pablo moves his wife to Germany. However, due to the fact that she always carries a big wad of cash, she's held by the authorities at the airport. Pablo gets into a frenzy as this is illegal. Funny how he knows how to quote the law when it's an advantage to him, isn't it? As his hands are tied, he makes a call to the German embassy and lets loose a number of expletives to the speaker on the phone.
Cada hijo de puta alemán que vive en Colombia.
Calling him a Nazi and a fucking racist. Of course, we can't forget his signature gonorrhea line to describe him as well. He tries to make other calls to ensure his wife and kids can get into Germany, but it's to no avail.
Usted una vez me dijo que yo tenía los mismos derechos que cualquier ciudadano colombiano.
It's one of the moments that I truly sympathize with Pablo. As he's the bearer of his own sins, there's no need for his family to be involved, but Murphy still finds a way to halt their immigration.
Espero haya disfrutado Alemania.
¿Qué primo, qué pasó? ¿Dónde estaba? ¿En la oficina? En la oficina.
Pablo testing Gustavo's loyalty comes in at number 3. Pablo calls for a meeting with Gustavo in a dark room, and as Gustavo walks in, he has no idea that his life hangs in the balance. Pablo asks him a few questions, and as he answers, Pablo rises up, picks up a bunch of dynamite, and just lights it in front of him.
A ver qué vas a hacer ahora. ¿Nos vas a matar o qué?
He walks back to Gustavo and keeps conversing as the wick is going. Gustavo's face goes as white as a sheet of paper, and he looks like he's about to shit himself. Pablo asks him another question, and as he answers in a satisfactory manner, he removes the wick from the dynamite and just walks away, leaving behind a completely petrified Gustavo.
¿Es que acaso cuando no he estado yo con vos?
I have to say, this is as extreme as loyalty tests come. I wouldn't want to be in Gustavo's position there.
Dudando de mi lealtad, Pablo.
Amy tries to convince them to switch sides by highlighting that Pablo's on the run and can't be found. Pablo then makes one of the most epic entrances. At this point, Pablo calls Berna to send his message. He shoots Jamie while on the phone and says to Berna in third person,
Que a Pablo Escobar se le respeta, hijo de puta.
Clearly, his message was sent loud and clear.
Estaremos ahí en 20 minutos.
And finally, at number 1, we have Pablo killing Colonel Carrillo. Pablo arranges an ambush for one of his most hated enemies, Colonel Carrillo. It's a typical drive-by, and after the extras do their work, Pablo drives onto the scene. He walks up to Carrillo, who's been shot and is lying on the ground waiting to die. However, Pablo's not done with him.
Míreme. Que me mire.
He walks up and pulls a bullet that Carrillo gave to a child to bring to Pablo as a message for his death. Pablo loads it into the gun and explains that he's giving it back.
Es por mi primo, Gustavo. Cobarde. Hijo de puta.
He pumps Carrillo full of lead for his cousin Gustavo and then walks away like a boss, leaving behind an aftermath of dead bodies. And so, as all good things do, this list comes to an end. But what have been your favourite Pablo Escobar moments? And what do you think we may have missed out on our list? Let us know in the comments below. And also remember, this is Volume 2, so make sure you check out Volume 1 in the description below. Be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell to stay in the loop of my future uploads. Thank you for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time on the TV Regent.
Yo soy Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria.